Hi, and welcome to the GM Show on the Ear to the Ground Sports Network, the home of the unsung sports grid. I'm Galen, joined by my co-host tonight, MJ. MJ, we have a lot to get to, but first, how you doing, my friend?
Doing fantastic. Like you said, Galen, we have too much to get to without having a show last week. A lot going on, not just in Boston, but all over the sports world.
Absolutely. It is Wednesday, September 27th. Just a couple minutes past the hour, 6:02. We're coming to you live from StreamYard. And like we were just saying, yep, there is a ton to get to. And let's just get right after it. Because Lord knows we're going to be running right up against it tonight. But let's kick it off with everybody's favorite topic these days, Ime Udoka. Not officially just yet, but I guess you can say head coach was maybe not. But for the time being, officially suspended for the 2022-2023 season for having an intimate relationship with a female staff member. MJ, I've been wanting to pick your brains about this ever since we learned about this late last week. I think it was late Thursday night. News started breaking with the Wojs of the world and the Shams. Some great reporting. Two great insiders around the NBA, well respected reporters. And what they say, almost always as good as gold and spot on. So, yeah, there's been some changing regarding this story. I mean, initially it was written up saying that, it was consensual. Now that, convenient C word has been since kind of removed for much of the reporting. And now it seems to be trending like it could have been going one way, and not so much, as mutual as what we were led to believe. And with that, I just want to ask you, if it was consensual. I mean, obviously, I feel like they would still be running with that, and sticking to that. But in the case that it wasn't so consensual after all, and now seeing Ime facing a docking of at least 1 year, and who knows? I mean, it may very well end up costing him his fate here in Boston, at least anyway. Um, from whatever you're reading and you're hearing, do you think this suspended is basically appropriate and right in line with what's leaking out?
Well, I think it is appropriate. From what the reports that we've been getting reports ever since late Wednesday, throughout the weekend into this week that we're getting reports of who it was, which was obviously it's a mistake to do to put someone that's not in the media's eye, to kind of put them under that kind of telescope, to kind of to speculate that it could be this woman, this female, this staffer, this other female staffer. It's inappropriate and unfair to them. But at first you hear about he had a consensual relationship, and I was one that was pretty. When I first thought it was consensual, I didn't think the year-long suspension was worthy, because I said to myself, if it's an ethical thing, then you fine him, you maybe suspend him a few games. But if both parties are actually, you know, actually want to, go forward with this relationship or whatever it may be, then that's on them. That's, it's none of our business what people do on their free time. But it seems as though, after reports from Adrian Wojnarowski and the Shams Charanias of the world, that it actually was something that he was trying to force. And it may have started as like consensual in the beginning, but it seems as though he was trying to force his power onto this associate, which I've learned from. I mean, I'm not, and I can't really quote this. Can't quote the source, and I can't confirm. But a lot of people speculate that this could have been um, a spouse of someone that works within the building. So that could have kind of elevated the actual investigation by the Celtics into this affair, which has been going on. The investigation went on, early in the summer after the finals had ended. So it seems as though that could have been something that kind of triggered the Celtics investigating this and trying to find more information. And it also seems as though this particular staffer, again, we're not going to speculate who it was, he was basically using his title as Celtics head coach as something that could potentially get her in trouble if she did not go forward with these these their relationship. Which, like I said, these are all non-conformed source. This is what I've been hearing, and I think Adrian and Shams have actually reported something similar to that. But that's what I heard, and it just there's a lot to go unpack with this Ime Udoka situation. A lot of people are speculating that this could actually hinder the Celtics season, and that this team may not go. This may dampen their chances at repeating going to the finals and potentially winning this time. Um, Let me just say this: what if everything that's come out after the fact, after we found out it wasn't consensual, is true? It shouldn't dampen anything that goes on within that locker room, because it's uncalled for, it's inhumane, and it's something that you shouldn't you as an organization, and a lot of people are talking that the Celtics kind of botched this whole releasing of the stories to the public and things of that nature. I don't think they did anything too terrible as far as handling it. They handled it as best as they could. Once the news breaks, people are going to start doing what they do. So it's not, Brad Stevens addressed it, Wick addressed it, and now as Celtics Media Day started yesterday, now the players are starting to get questions, and Joe Mazzulla, the interim head coach, is starting to get questions. So it's something that's gonna for the present may hinder their potential of because you may just have to talk about it all the time. But I think in the long run, I mean, the things that are going to dampen this team's chances are the product on the court, which right now you're going to be without Rob Williams till probably early to mid December, and obviously you lost your free agent signing Danilo Gallinari to a torn ACL for the season. So that's going to be what's actually going to hurt their chances at the NBA Finals. They still have a great squad. They still have room to add. But yeah, I don't think Ime Udoka's future with the Celtics. I think right now the suspension is kind of buys them time to work something out with, to eventually have him resign or just outright fire him. And from sources that you see, the people out there are saying, some unknown agent is saying that he's done in the league. No team's going to hire him as a head coach or an assistant coach. So apparently, people have more information than we do. So apparently, the information they have isn't looking very, very good for Ime.
Yeah, and I think you were spot on with saying what you just did before wrapping up. I mean, this is just unbelievable. I mean, if you're Ime, I mean, like, what are you doing? If it just we were led to believe one way, and if it ends up leaking out and being every bit, spot on, that it was a bit one sided, and he was trying to basically throw his power and his position, his weight around, and basically force the issue. I mean, that is just maddening to me. That it just words can't even speak of such. I mean, the last time we seen him in basically this very similar of a team, I think much of these guys end up coming back. They pretty much have the whole team back, preparing for this year, and then they had some key signings along the way. Obviously, one of them, unfortunately, was already ruled out going in with Gallinari for the season, but he had another really huge and I think pretty big signing in himself, and the Brogdon. So you can make a legitimate case that they're bringing back the same team and that much better, with some of these signings. And who knows? It looks like they may try and bring on another key power forward slash center. Now with the latest news regarding big man there, Robert Williams. But it's just like I don't understand. You came into the your first season, rookie season as a head coach, have never been held that position in this league. You basically get hand gifted you such a great, overall setup, personnel on the floor, organization, history, brought this team all the way practically to almost the final team standing within 2 wins of the NBA Finals just several months back. And then for you just to be completely reckless off the court and just think that you're basically untouchable, and what you say goes, and think that in today's modern world that we live in, especially with social media and all this stuff and all this back channel whatever, the likes of ESPN of the world, I mean, you just think that some way somehow that you can just run reckless, run rampant, do whatever you want. For all the many murmurs and reporting that we often heard regarding him and this team, saying no one individual is bigger than the team. Don't put yourself, ahead of the team. Hello, what did I miss here? That's exactly what you ended up doing, Ime. And for it, you just, like I said, had a great thing potentially to a point of no return. And if it ends up, coming to that, as an end result, I mean, guess what? Look at yourself in the mirror. You have no one to blame but yourself. He's in this. Yeah, it takes two, granted, to tango, like they say, but Ime did this to Ime. No one, no excuses, no finger pointing. It starts and ends with you, you know. And I mean, I don't know. I just like to think that if you or I were literally hand gifted such a golden opportunity, you move mountains, especially after their first half of the season last year, whatever, and for them to make and end up pulling off the turnaround that they did all in the same season. It was like literally two different teams all in the same season. And you have two exceptional talents, one arguably a top 5 in the league being Jason Tatum, the other one certainly top 15, top 20, definitely in Jaylen Brown. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better situation. So yeah, I'm with you. I mean, initially it seemed to be a bit stiff, but now with everything looking to unfold and continue to come out, I think maybe they could have handled it a little bit better in house, which we're going to be getting ready to get into in just a minute. But all in all, I think I don't think they were that far off, and I think it every bit kind of like it is going to end up fitting the crime when all said and done. But it's just I can't believe I can't believe everything that's literally playing out. Just talk about literally days before media day, which was officially just yesterday. Started like I said, late last Thursday, late week, and then of course we just had this to sit on all throughout the weekend until we finally took next to the airwaves here tonight. But yeah, I just, since I kind of already touched on it, I want to get your thoughts. How good of an opportunity did he ultimately cost himself because of this situation?
Well, we all saw how the first half of the season last year started. We thought maybe this was a bad idea. Ime never been in a position like this. Obviously, going 25-25 and kind of never really cracking that 500 mark, going over 500. And then obviously end of January throughout the end of the season, the Celtics just became a juggernaut. And Jason Tatum looked like he was taking that next step, which I think we all saw that he did. And then they just kind of went through the playoffs, went through the Nets, the Bucks, the Heat, three of the best teams in that in the conference that season, except the Nets were kind of if off and on because they didn't have their bevy of talent. But then you obviously take on the Warriors and you take a 2-1 series lead. So there's a lot, even though you blow that, lose that series eventually, you have a lot of momentum to build off of. And then they go and get a guy like Brogdon, Gallinari. They were making moves. They were kind of making strides to kind of keep this team intact. And if you want to believe what you want to believe about the Durant thing, they were serious about doing that as well. So that's not a team that's very content about just getting there and not really doing anything with it. They're a team that actually wants to go somewhere. So as far as what Udoka did for himself and probably for his legacy as a head coach, not just in the NBA, but not just in Boston, but just in the NBA in general, he did blow that opportunity by getting too caught up in marital relations. But when I look at teams of the past who've gotten to finals or we actually even won finals, not to take this whole situation with Ime lightly, but the coach in the NBA doesn't really matter as it does for, say, football at times. Um, we've seen guys like David Black take the Cavaliers to the finals. And obviously, you have a guy like LeBron James on the team, so that makes a huge difference. But if you want to believe what you want to believe and believe, you see what Jason Tatum is and what Jaylen Brown can be and all the other pieces around them, they're not LeBron James, obviously. That's a high standard. But if you have that, if you keep that talent intact and healthy, the sky's the limit. And no matter who's up there, whether it's David Blatt, Joe Schmo, anybody, like even I don't want to speak ill of Joe Mazzulla, but we don't know who he is just yet. And he's, he's a little bit young on the young side in his mid-30s. So, he has a lot on his plate. But I believe that with this team, I think Mazzulla can still accomplish the same things that Ime accomplished. The big thing with NBA locker rooms is egos, trying to control the egos. And is he able to control the egos that are rising for guys like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and the ones that are already there with Marcus Smart and such. So that's what I have more concerned about when it comes to the stuff on the court. Obviously, we have to see it you have to see it there. But, Tyronn Lue, I mean, he's still coaching in the league and he's not a terrible coach, but he got that team to the finals as well. And, Eric Spoelstra was someone that no one ever thought could be that guy. And even after LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, he still was able to kind of coach that team into contenders and kind of go deep in the playoffs after that. So, give Joe Mazzulla a chance. If anything, that's going to derail the season. It's the product on the court and injuries and things of that nature. Ime blew his chance, and he's going to have to live with that. And I do think that this suspension is just a preliminary stage before he actually eventually gets fired by the Boston Celtics. And if you believe what people are saying, then this was his one and only opportunity as a head coach, because no team's going to want to take on that kind of scrutiny and that kind of publicity on their hands.
Talking about PR,
Yeah.
HR, and all that stuff. I mean, yeah, if he doesn't ever sniff an opportunity around the league again, listen, I mean, he just has no one to blame but himself. I mean, these are some serious allegations. And to say that it's ugly, it's messy, it's to say the least. I mean, it is like, I don't know if I'm sure you probably heard, the former NBA there, Matt Barnes, and what he had to say on the matter. He's saying it's like 10 times worse than what is being reported. I mean, it's just beyond ugly, and there's just, it's hard to kind of just put it into words just how serious and how awful, things are shaken out here in Boston, and especially if, you are, the man, Ime. I mean, literally, it was handed to you on basically a silver platter. Had a great setup here, and to potentially see it all just being taken from you, and rightfully so. I mean, listen, if he's done here in Boston and potentially even that much more, just in actuality, potentially the league as a whole. I mean, there's just that just tells you everything that you need to know in a nutshell, of just really how bad, things came to a fall, here in Boston. And just like I said, it's clearly out of the blue. You know what I mean? Out of the blue. I didn't see this coming. I mean, obviously no one did. And why would you? You'd like to think that people know their roles and know how to be a constant professional. And you would like to think not so just on the court, but in cases like now off the court as well. And clearly that was anything but. But yeah, I'm with you. If we're gonna anoint these guys a championship caliber team still, for again pretty much the same team that finished up last year, bringing back, and like I said, even adding to that team. They every bit deserve that title. They deserve to have that mantle. It's now up to not so much the interim coach, Missoula there, but certainly the players. You hit on this. This is certainly one of those type of leagues that it's a players' league, and as long as they have their head, screwed on straight, they're able to avoid the big injury, and just pretty much more often than not be able to execute night in and night out. And you have calibers, in dual fashion, players like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, spearheading this version of the Celtics, and maybe even other teams around the league, players of that pedigree. I mean, no, they should still be the front runners, or considered to be one of the front runners, and still have it in them some way, somehow, to overcome this obvious and huge distraction, adversity that they're, forced to deal with right out the gate or whatever. I still feel that, a championship, Udoka or no Udoka is every bit still possible. But it's going to come down to them, just like you were saying. And I agree. But speaking of the players, Celtics Media Day, that just came and went yesterday. Are you buying any of these quotes that we heard, maybe read in the media? Certainly, I will give them this. They're coming across as clearly with that confusion, in their voice, in their words, the tone. They definitely seem confused, surprised. And again, they're human beings just like you or I. So that does make sense. But is there a little bit too much of, both of those things, confusion and surprise? Could there be a little bit of pandering going on? Because I'll clarify, in saying the latter. I only say that because if you're Jason Tatum, especially, and even his counterpart there, Jaylen Brown, I just have a hard time believing living in either one of their shoes, being literally basically the face of the franchise, and sharing that, together, because Tatum is the franchise, but Jaylen Brown's pretty much right there and not far behind, and especially because management, higher up management, Brad Stevens and those guys, whatever, obviously consulted these dudes, which led to Ime coming to Boston. I find it hard to believe that they were kind of left on the outskirts as much as they were leading on just yesterday. I feel like, part of kind of what I heard and saw from them may have them just been kind of just telling us what made sense, and a little bit of deflecting, and AKA, like I said, pandering, just to kind of like keep the questions to a minimum. I feel like maybe, and probably, at the end of the day, maybe they didn't know as much as what they thought they ought to know and would like to know, by upper management. But I don't really feel like it was that far fetched, like that. They were like the mere same, like you or I, and they were completely caught off guard, blindsided, and just really just left on an island when it comes to the whole like communication. I feel like it's not as much as that what they were leading on, but I don't think it was nearly as bad either. I feel like some way, somehow, this is an ideal situation where the truth clearly lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect, like, even though Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are the face of the franchise, Um, I don't think that we should expect them to know everything that's going on, because obviously this is a personal, situation going on with Udoka and this particular staffer um, on the Celtics. And I don't really think we should go ahead and attack Tatum and Brown and automatically say, well, how did you not know about this? Because this stuff could have been happening outside the building, and maybe a little bit, some higher ups may know, and that could be kind of, and maybe they didn't know the actual extent of it. I don't want to speculate that maybe they knew this was going on and kind of like kept it quiet. But you never, you don't. I wouldn't expect Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Now, what I do find it very odd is if this is going on. I mean, Celtics are not. They don't have to. Not required to tell these players anything during the investigation, because just in case something doesn't come out, or whatever they're looking for, it could kind of hinder the character of Ime Udoka. But the fact that before this decision was ever made, was your kind of two superstar players not made informed before this all hit Adrian Wojnarowski's desk or phone and said, hey, this is a situation going on with your coach, Ime. We're going to have to take the next steps into disciplinary action. Or even just the team in general, not just Brown and Tatum, but at least inform these guys that, hey, you're not going to have the same head coach for quite possibly your rest of your tenure here, because he's not. This is what happened,
and that's what I'm saying. Like communications like that, I feel like I have a hard time just believing that wasn't somewhat at least brushed over, but when you listen to these guys, I feel like there was absolutely nothing. It was like a pure blindside. And it's just like, if you're Tatum, if you're Jaylen Brown, how is that even possible? Okay, we're not telling you, oh, you need to get to the Grant Williams or even Marcus Smarts of the world, but Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't feel right, and I feel like if you're the two of them, if you really want to keep this to a minimum, then maybe there is, like I said, a little bit of sugarcoating, and maybe, they every bit feel entitled and within their right just to kind of play dumb, just, play it off.
Well, I think, yeah, then like you heard Jason Tatum say shit. I heard it on Twitter, just like the rest of you.
Right, exactly.
I don't think that's not how you would want, especially your superstar player, that's not how you would want him to find out. Because no matter if, obviously, this is bigger than just the game of basketball, but to have him find out that there's going to be a significant change to this roster, and someone that he really got along with, really appreciated as a coach, as a player coach, you want to at least give him a heads up and say, hey, this is what's going on. We're going to have to do this. And I would think, I don't want to put words in Jason Tatum's mouth, but I would think that he would see understand that this is where this has to go. But if you believe what they say that they found out on Twitter, that could be another thing that could hinder their the long-term relationship with the Celtics and one of the best top 6 players in the NBA, and right. You want to kind of make sure he's in the wear. Jaylen Brown, yes, to a lesser extent, he is a great player, but at this point, you don't know where you're at with Jaylen Brown with the player and organization relationship, especially after the summer of Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant talks. But if you're trying to not only save face as an organization or save your image with your players, Tatum has got to be the first one you reach out to, because let's face it, as far as as far as he goes, then we go. The Celtics mean it.
Absolutely.
And if he's not motivated now because of how they handle the situation personally, then that could be another thing that could kind of dampen that chance at an NBA title.
Yeah, and basically, what you were saying, just some quotes yesterday from Celtics Media Day. He basically told reporters, and you read the statement, you watch the press conference. Apparently, there are a lot of things they can't speak about. He told reporters, I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't know. It's hard for me to answer if things were handled in the right way or they weren't. I just don't know. He also said he found out on Twitter like everybody else, and hasn't spoken with Udoka in the aftermath of the suspension. That too, I thought was very interesting because I think, whether he found out from the execs, Brad Stevens, or from Twitter, I mean, I feel like doesn't it feel normal or like it should, again, let's just say that was you or I as a player, and just like someone you're very fond of, was your coach, he brought you to new heights and stuff like that in year one. I mean, I just feel like the humor side, in this would just, I mean, wouldn't you think? Wouldn't you feel tempted? I'm not saying that Ime would have taken his text or his call at this present time, but it's just like, I don't know. He just said, he hasn't spoken. Like I said, whether that's spot on or that's a little like, I'll just play dumb or whatever, and maybe they have spoken or he has attempted to reach out. Who knows? We'll probably never know that. But, Brown also basically second. He hadn't spoken to Udoka. No compensation. As far as me on my end, he told reporters. Initial reactions, we were all shocked what was going on, a little confused, but a lot of the information wasn't being shared with us or members of the team, so we can't really comment on it. I wish we had more details, he added. From what we know, it's hard to make a decision based on whether it's consensual or not in the workplace, which we know has happened before in the workplace. It looks like there is more to it than what meets the eye. Both Tatum and Brown expressed optimism about the upcoming season under new head coach Joe Mazzulla. So, very, appropriate and responsible, I feel, remarks, regarding, their head coach and what is going on at this current time. But I don't know. I just feel like it's not as out of the loop as they make it seem. And I don't think it's full blown pandering. I just think some way, somehow, they're just kind of dancing around as best as possible just to kind of let this whole nature of Ime and this current situation just hopefully run its course sooner rather than later. But, being in an incredible media market, a huge, very intense, just constant, just digging like, a lot of great reporters around these parts are known to do. I feel like that them as players, they're not stupid. They know that this is going to continue to hit them in waves, and they probably have their ways of attacking this and approaching it. And I just feel like that's probably kind of what's going on there. Probably playing the media, and just trying to get their message, especially beyond that, to the fan base and stuff like that, and just hopefully keep all these constant mentions and reminders and all that stuff or whatever to a minimum, and hopefully sooner rather than later get back to the all important and main focus, and that's this upcoming season and getting after banner 18. But enough of that. I knew that was going to dominate the first half of the show. But I just got to ask you real quick, before we turn the page again, say it ain't so. Aaron Judge. Can you believe it, MJ? Aaron Judge actually made it out of a 4-game set, which started last Thursday night. He made it out of the Yankees Red Sox series, and he's still stuck on number 60. Now you going into the weekend knowing that he had just hit number 60, and just like there's no way in hell he's not hitting both. Forget 61, but you best be for damn sure he's gonna break that record and get number 62. He's got 4 games. How many at bats that is that? Roughly, probably
3 to
anyways
4,
between
4
12, 15, almost 16 at bats in those 4 games, whatever. There's no way in hell. Of course he ties this at bare minimum, if not is expected and predicted to break this thing. Nope. Here comes Thursday through Sunday. Granted, the last one was a rain shortened win for New York. So that ended a bit abrupt, but yeah, some way, somehow he's kind of gone semi-cold, and it would have been interesting knowing their very, well-renowned history between the two franchises and all their highlights down through the years. And that could have just only added to it, only for it not to go down. I mean, again, it's only a matter of time. There's still enough games left. I mean, you got to think he's going to at least hit one, if not that 2 home runs before the playoffs begin. But it's just like, I just can't believe it. Everybody was just like banking. Is it going to be Friday, Saturday, afternoon, Sunday night baseball? Like, there was just so many opportunities. And if their play-by-play there, was it his name, Sterling there? I can only imagine. I can only imagine what he has drawn up for this next call to be, and it's just crazy because they were even saying, that the expectancy had ramped up so much that it was pretty much all nationally based. Broadcast. Even Apple TV Plus was in on it, along with Fox and of course Sunday night as well. But yeah, I mean, were you convinced that was going to go down in that last series that just was Sox Yankees? How surprised are you?
I'm surprised I didn't go through because the Red Sox pitching staff sucks. So I was
exactly.
Eventually, he will get.
That's why I drew it up like that. Like, I just can't believe somehow they made it out.
I'm gonna sound like I know what the history with Roger Maris, was 61, and then obviously 62 would break Roger Maris's record. Is that for the most part why people are going so crazy about this? Because it's just this Yankee single season record? Or is it because Bonds hit 73 in 2001?
Yeah, but I think what you're seeing here is because now, we fast forward years later, and that was just an obvious steroid era, like no other. And they were all doing it, and, no doubt, chasing history, between the few of them, that season. At least to date, we don't know if Aaron Judge is indeed clean, or is there any sort of any sort of funny business going on to help him go out and accomplish this latest feat of his, in epic fashion. But until it comes out otherwise, I feel like this is going to mean more, because I feel like the home runs haven't been going down, at such a once upon a time, ferocious rate, and clearly spread throughout the league, like they were doing, in the late 90s and that sort of general time. So, if you, depending on what side of the coin you fall on, it's just like you like to root for history and think that it is different, and that everything is going down like it should be, especially with them testing now in baseball. And let's face it, I mean, if he is doing anything, it hasn't shown up, or else he would have been sat down probably long before now. So I think that's why people are very intrigued, kind of rooting for him, and every bit excited and very optimistic in this case, because it just means more than the Bonds and McGuire sort of days, with them finishing, was it 72, 73 home runs.
73 Bonds in 2001, and then McGuire and Sosa back in the 98,
right.
98 with yeah, I mean, that for me, that's big. When I'm looking at people going like crazy about it, I'm like, all right, it's 61, that was a big thing back in the day for Roger Maris. There's a whole movie about it that Billy Crystal made. And then I'm like, and then I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, am I going crazy? Like, didn't Bonds hit that like 73? Like, it's not even close. But I guess if you're right, I mean, like you said, I can't definitively say that Aaron Judge isn't on steroids. But I mean, for now, I guess we can do that. And then if he, God forbid, he gets caught later on, then we'll be like, all right, we got to go do this all over again. And then, for 61. Right. But you never, I mean, obviously, Fernando Tatis got caught early in the year, and so
that guy never even saw a single at bat. That's what's funny about that. He was injured to start the year, and then when he's over here trying to make his comeback via a rehab assignment, then that shoe drops, and it's just like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah. Yeah.
like, didn't see that coming, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, a lot of times there's these supplements and stuff like that, that gets used and I don't know, implemented into their regimen to try and speed up the clock. I mean, but yeah, and knowing how once upon a time the whole steroid era, and just that whole sort of thing, really playing into the whole like history chasing and just balls flying out the yard at just an incredibly alarming rate. People's any chance that they get, they're like, "Oh, here we go, another one," and it's just like, God forbid he comes back and he just remains like an absolute stud, for much of his career, and he's in the running, for the Hall of Fame. Like, is that gonna look to sway their decision? I mean, who knows? I mean, I feel like we're years away, so maybe over time people will kind of like just give him the benefit of the doubt and sweep that under the rug, but we'll have to see. But
I
yeah,
find, I find it interesting too, like the amount of walks he's had 18 walks so far this year. I mean, that's definitely not even close to the best. The most walks 37 and 01, and then and Bonds had 35 and 01. So I'm trying
right.
to feel, I kind of feel like some guy is just going to give some guy on the Orioles, or I don't know if you want to, because the Orioles are playing in New York that's the final series of the year. If some
Mhm.
guy, some pitcher, some low, it's just going to be like, whatever, just screw it and just throw him right down the middle just so he can get it. Just kind of like when Brett Favre fell down to give Michael Strahan the sack. Just kind of give
Right.
like, and that would be a wrong thing to do, because you would hope your players would compete. But I just have a feeling that someone's just going to be like, all right, just give him this one home run. If the bases are
Yeah.
empty, there's not,
I,
it's
I
not.
I think there's still enough time though for it not to come to that, and I would
Yeah,
hope that it wouldn't. But hey, we'll see.
yeah.
But yeah, just another day. We're still waiting, playing the waiting game with that. But I think
Mhm.
it's gonna probably go down in the next 24 to 48 hours. That's just my hunch.
In
But
Toronto.
yep. So we'll see. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm not. But yeah, there was a game a couple of days ago. Patriots Ravens. If you haven't heard, Patriots are now 1-2 on the season. They lost a tough one at home to the Baltimore Ravens, 37-26. MJ, I'd have to say this one kind of stings a little bit. I feel, I don't know, if you were able to take in the whole game. I'm sure you were,
Yeah.
but just looking back on the game, the Patriots, they were looking good, and they had pretty much they were in it. They were definitely kind of showing out, especially offensively, looking really, really good, in front of the home crowd for their debut on this season. And it just seemed like they were going to find a way, some way, somehow. Not over here expecting a blowout, especially with the ability of the Ravens to put up points. But here we are, played a really good, first half right into the third quarter. And then, boom, the fourth quarter happened. You know, Mac was over there slinging it all around the yard. You know, his stat line, on the day, he threw for 300 plus yards. But what ended up being his Achilles heel is, at the worst possible timing. Uh, Instead of finding his receivers, he was throwing it into the hands of the opponent, which again, he finished off with 3 interception, and that, if anything, is what did them in, and cost them this game. Was those interceptions? They were all big interceptions, but before that started to play out, I mean, he was slinging the ball, pretty much all game long. Was featuring the likes of, especially, Parker, Devontae Parker there, early and often, finishing with 10 targets for 5 catches, 156 yards. And his other favorite, going back to last year, as we all know, and like we've all been lobbying for since, we've noticed the shenanigans and being robbed of, such snap counts and stuff like that. And just, the opening week, getting 2 snaps, Kedrick, my man Bourne, getting the short end of the stick. But yeah, he was just, making all the throws, short, intermediate, and long. He was looking really good. He was literally putting the balls only where his receivers can make the catch. It just came down to a very unlike Matt type performance when all said and done, because I feel like some of the decisions that clearly led to those interceptions and stuff like that, when you look back on last year, we didn't really see him be so careless and be so interception, prone, in a lot of these games. But like I said, and all of a sudden, just Sunday happened, and not the defense, not the refs or anyone like that, but Mac Jones, was the primary sort of advocate for going down, and falling to 1-2 on the season.
Yeah, no, there's no one really. I mean, the defense they had bad field positioning because of the interceptions. Mac threw a lot of costly interceptions in times where they were making a run to the end zone, where like there was one he threw the back of the far left back of the end zone that you can't have that. You can't have that right now. You're down 21-20. You come out of the halftime, score a touchdown. You're up 20-14. You have some momentum. You kind of think, as a Pats fan or as even a player or anyone on that staff, you're like, all right, well, now we have momentum. We got the ball. This is why we deferred to start the game. And then you get the ball back. You get a fumble recovery. And you're like, all right, we're back in this. We're back in this after we're down 21-20. And then you just throw inherent passes. And that's the problem that I've seen Mac do a lot through these first 3 games, whether it's that go pattern that he threw in that first drive in week 1 against Miami, where ball gets intercepted by Javon Holland. He throws one pass to Nelson Aguilar that Nelson Aguilar had to kind of go up for it and kind of moss the defender. And that was all, that was cool to see. But I feel as though I've been seeing a lot of deep balls thrown to a contested player, whether it's Devontae Parker or Nelson Aguilar. He wants to get chunk plays, which is not something you see out of a Bill Belichick coach team. You're more of a conservative. You kind of, get short yardage, get first downs, make sure you kind of wear out that defense. And what Mac Jones is doing is wearing out his own defense, because he's throwing those balls into double coverage, and those more times often than not, those are getting tipped and picked or just picked. And now he has these two touchdowns, 5 interceptions on the year, and we're only after game 3. That's something you see out of a sloppy team like the New York Jets, a team that's not used to this kind of this is the Ryan Fitzpatrick kind of game where this guy he doesn't have it. These backup quarterbacks. Mac Jones looked like this guy was picked 15th overall in last year's draft. He had some nice plays. He had made some nice throws. He got out of the pocket, scrambled around. Had the 1 touchdown run. And I don't want to automatically say that I am, that I am over the Mac Jones experience. But so far in this new regime with the Patricia calling the plays, Joe Judge being the quarterback's coach, I don't know if he's handling the change very well. It just seems
he definitely isn't. He definitely isn't. It's beyond obvious at this point. It's beyond obvious.
And you can either say it's the player, it's the coach. I could say it's a bit of both, because the player is only as good as his coaching at times. A lot of people can argue Brady made Belichick, and that's a different discussion. But for the most part, if you have a bad coach, telling you what to do or coaching you up, you're not going to see any progression. We saw some progression. How Mac Jones handled last year, and now with McDaniels leaving, you think, maybe Bill O'Brien, maybe he'll promote Nick Haley, tight ends coach. No, you go to 2 guys who have never coached offense in their freaking life. And again, it makes me upset, because this is a product that we've been, since I was a kid, that we've loved. And now you just kind of go willy nilly, thinking Bill Belichick is, and I know this is all about Mac, but I'm just saying a lot of this stuff with going on with Mac, yes, it's decision making, but it's also the coaches, the decisions they're basically enforcing or encouraging to do, and it's the product just looks just awful. And now you're 1-2 for the second straight year, and your next game isn't going to be easier. You're in Green Bay, and the Green Bay is coming off a big win on the road against Tom Brady and the Bucks, and you may have to go in with Brian Hoyer, or if you want to get a little cute with it, your rookie quarterback who hasn't been active all seasons thus far, Bailey Zappi. So, and depending on how long this injury, I know we're going to talk about that next, how long the injury is, this could be very damning for the Patriots as far as this season goes. And who knows how this thing is handled, because it may be the thing that actually makes Robert Kraft finally say, hey, Bill, we got to see what someone else can do, because the last 3 seasons, whether you saw some good things on 21, it just seems as though Bill is kind of losing his edge.
Yeah, and I think I'll even expand on that. It's not that Mac, just in some ways somehow is just like a shell of himself, whether it's coaching or him. Like, yeah, there's definitely blame to go around on both ends. But I think what ultimately you're seeing, but you are probably reluctant to mention, but I'll say it. I mean, I'm seeing it on the field. It's translating to these pressers post game. It's even being continuing to be expanded on throughout the week. If you just continue just to read in between the tea leaves, I think what you're seeing from Mac Jones is in ways that he's comfortable with, and is trying to do so, within like sort of team policy and guidelines, what's okay to say and what's not okay. But at the same time, and he doesn't want to come across that he's all the way to the left drinking their juice to the fullest, right? So I think what you're seeing is a little bit of pushback from him. Like he's just talking a lot more straightforward. He's coming across as just like, like just with his mannerisms. We weren't quite seeing that, really play out and show itself, last year, to the extent that it's been, through 3 weeks, there was even a comment or two from this past week, just getting, what dare I say, a bit sarcastic and cocky, with our own local media. Like, I don't remember that ever playing out at all last year, and I just feel like some way somehow he's just trying to continuously, without totally just going against team rules and team protocol, he's some way somehow, I feel like, just is insisting on sending us these subliminal messages where it's just like, yep, like we have issues. I hear you. I'm frustrated. And, because of it, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a little bit more out of the norm, this and that, something that is kind of out of my character to do so. At least, in the one season that we have to go off of it. So that's what we're seeing is pushback within reason, just letting everybody know, just like, yep, I don't agree with, what's going on. And there's some butting of the heads clearly behind closed doors. So that's what clearly I feel like what's going on. And I don't see no end in sight, which leads me to my next question. Could this high ankle sprain for Mac Jones be a good thing for him and the Patriots? I guess I'll, hand it over to you.
Well, from what you hear right now, they're both kind of disagreeing on exactly what the timetable that they want. I mean, Mac Jones wants to get a second opinion before he actually goes ahead and goes, obviously they're saying surgery isn't required, but Mac Jones may want to go that route, which will put him out 6 to 8 weeks. Another thing is the Patriots want the max to be 4 weeks without the surgery, and there's a little bit of conflict of interest there. Not conflict of interest, but just a little bit of they're not seeing eye to eye, and that could be an issue for not only the current state of their relationship, but also in the future because they can always go back. Like we saw with the Gronkowskis, how they handled Gronk's injuries. There was never they weren't really agreeing onto how to handle some of those injuries that Gronk had suffered with the Patriots. And as far as the blessing in disguise, it could be a blessing in disguise for this point. Mac Jones to start the season has 2 touchdowns with 5 interceptions. Very, it's that's a simple stat, but it's a stat that it just shows he's making more mistakes than he is making good decisions. So I think that for now to take him off the field to kind of decompress, whether or not it's a bad idea for the actual state of winning a game, because we all see what Brian Hoyer is. We've seen how he is with other teams. We've seen how he was with us, in that Kansas City game in 2020 when Cam Newton was out with COVID. The product may not look pretty for us, but if you actually want Mac Jones to kind of take a back seat for the time being and say, okay, let me look at what is going, what am I doing wrong? Where can I actually get better at? Obviously, decision making, that's a obvious one, but maybe he's not seeing the game the way, Bill wants it to be seen for him. For him, maybe he's just kind of, rushing passes, thinking he can get the deep ball. Maybe for him to kind of be more conservative, like he kind of was last year. He wasn't throwing those passes last year. Maybe that was because McDaniels kind of coached him right. If you kind of go back to that kind of philosophy, and who cares? Matt Patricia doesn't like it. Matt Patricia doesn't. He's not an offensive coach. So it's clearly so far it's not working. Even in a win in Pittsburgh, that was ugly. You only scored 17 points. You're averaging 16.67 points, which is, if you want to round up, 17 points a game. That's not going to win games, especially against teams like the Ravens. And now you saw what the Dolphins are doing, or the Packers. So I think it is, and it isn't, because of, like I said, they're not seeing eye to eye on how to deal with the injury, but also maybe just get him off the field for the time being and see if he can kind of decompress.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. You make a lot of great points. I don't think you're wrong, but I think it's multiple fronts. I think it's definitely good for him, especially as a young quarterback in this league. Second season at the helm. Just to take a couple weeks off, to say the least, probably longer. Give him probably at least a good month or so, just to basically hit the reset button. And just kind of collect themselves. Allow him some time to find himself and, get his head, right. Because I feel like, with budding, I feel like, behind the scenes in the locker room and stuff like that, maybe on the sidelines with the coaching staff, we already seen him have an outburst, the other day during the game here in the loss to Baltimore. That was very unmac like. I just feel like it's all starting to come to a head, and come to a head very quickly. You mentioned, obviously his performance on the play this past week aside, hands down, this is the best that him and this offense has looked, and even still, it couldn't come, in winning fashion. They weren't able to get into the win column and just flip that record, in reverse from 1-2 to 2-1, when it could have easily been just that, a win. I think right now, he's not really a believer. He's not buying into what they're trying to do, for whatever reason. And I think it's validated as such. And let's face it, with this injury, yeah, it sucks that it's happened. It sounds like, definitely the surgery is best case scenario in terms of the healing process and stuff like that. He might be in favor of it. The team probably not so much, which, go figure. Patriots, medical staff or whatever, just trying to say, oh yeah, no, this is what we feel is best, whatever. Stop me if we haven't seen this play out and not such a good light in previous seasons, because we have. Okay. But let's face it, I think it's going to look better on him and not as damning on the team itself if he goes away for a little while, as opposed to staying, on the field and just continue to be a starter moving forward and dealing with no injuries. I think it's going to look a lot better because I don't necessarily know that him and his offense just yet are in a place where you can literally just overcome stupidity or a bad defensive of effort. Again, this is not your Tom Brady led offenses and stuff like that, where on any given week they can overcome that and still find a way and just continue to collect the W's. They're just not there yet. And I hate to say it, Patriots fans, they're probably not going to be this season. So, what would you prefer to happen? The Patriots look very, very, lackluster. Um, if not, basically average to below average. You know, in the I don't know the upcoming weeks. You know, I don't know. I just think that the Patriots are damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. And I know how I would like for it to play out if we're not going to go to the playoffs, if we're not going to be any better than the next team, or the teams that you do look and perceive as average or whatever. If we've now become one of those teams, then what's the point? Maybe this injury did happen. Um, you know, just in the nick of time. Lord knows the football gods knows why this happens above all. And if this is already right out the gate shaping up to not be the Patriots years, I mean, I will say this, 1-2 is certainly better than 0-3, right? So at least they have a W. So it's possible. But I will say this, next week aside, and I'm not even ruling out a Patriots win next week with Brian Hoyer at the helm. But I don't even know with the way they're playing, the way they're looking. Aside from Sunday's offensive performance, even that could have been a lot better. If Mac doesn't throw these picks, I don't even know if the Patriots themselves can go down to Green Bay and beat Aaron Rodgers in this lackluster, receiving core. Something that we're not known for him and Aaron Rodgers and a Devontae Adams led receiving core in previous years. I don't even know if he can go down there and beat Aaron Rodgers and those young pups at wide receiver, if he wasn't injured. That would be a tough game. The Lions, back here the following week. I would like to think that the Patriots would be favored, now that it looks like Swift is dealing, with some health concerns, and he may be out a week or two as well. So, I'd like to think that they could handle Detroit or whatever in that game, especially with no Swift. They should win that game again, but this isn't the Patriots of old. So maybe not there, the Browns, yeah, they have Jacoby Brissett, and Amari Cooper, but that running back tandem of Hunt and Chubb, okay, that could be another L, and then you have the Bears followed by the Jets, and then Indianapolis here on November 6th. I mean, I'm only, featuring and highlighting these games because if he does need surgery, let's face it, it's probably going to be anyways between 6 to 8 weeks, and that's the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games before their bye. The following week in week 10. So it looks like if he does opt for surgery and stuff like that, he should be able to be back certainly by week 11, right after their bye. But I don't even know if it's a foregone conclusion. If Mac wasn't dealing with this injury, if you're going ahead and winning 4 or 5 of these games, I'd like to think that they can. But from what they've seen, they've shown us, for the most part this season, one week they're down, the next week they're barely up, just barely sneaking past the Steelers, and then them looking good this past week, only to have them blow it, in the fourth quarter. I mean, I don't know. I'd like to think that they should be able to beat pretty much all those teams, but Green Bay next week. But I mean, let's face it, if they're not able to, and they, lose, half of these games or the majority of these games with Matt, they're going to look a lot worse. So if you're already not on the way to the playoffs, you're probably not going to finish as a playoff contender, and you're going to be flirting with like potentially being a bottom feeder in this league. I would rather it be at the expense of you not having your starting quarterback and giving him basically a pass and pointing the finger and just turn into like those couple months worth of games, a month and a half or whatever, when you were going to war each and every week with the Brian Hoyers of the world. Then I feel like that's what I mean by a blessing in disguise. It's gonna suck, but you're gonna be able to just chalk this up as a lost season, and just knowing, hey, you lost your young quarterback for a couple months. You were, obviously forced to go at it with your backup or whatever, and you just wasn't able to overcome it. Hey, you know what, hit the reset button as a team, and just come back next year and hopefully have a rather good draft pick because of it, a pretty high one, and then only look to implement and just get right back at it next year. So that's what I mean. I think it could be a blessing in disguise. At least now, like, he gets away, he goes away, and whatever happens, it is what it is. I want my team to win. I think that they can still collect some wins, but in the event that it doesn't, I feel like they've just by default come up with like a great easy out, and it's quick just to just deflect and just blame it on that, so it is what it is. But that's gonna do it for tonight's show. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We went a few minutes late only because we started a couple minutes late. But a lot of great talk today. Ime, Patriots, still waiting on Aaron Judge. For MJ, I'm Galen. Hope you guys enjoyed tonight, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Have a good night, everybody.
Take it easy, guys.